I'd like to welcome you to EVIT board meeting on June 24th, 24. We have a public hearing at the moment. Any public comments or anything?
No, sir. I don't see anybody.
Okay. You don't see anybody? Call over. Okay. Edith, we'd like for you to say the pledge first, since you didn't have anything to say in this part.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Save that for later. Let's do this. Adjourn the meeting. Okay, we will now bring the regular meeting to order. Let's see, we have the minutes. Item 5, regular minutes.
I move to approve the regular meeting minutes from June 10th, 2024.
I'll second.
Got a first and second? We get any questions or statements by anybody? Hearing none, we'll go vote by acclamation, please.
Am I doing it?
Yes, you are.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Okay, call to the public. And again, no public. Doggone it. We got consent agendas A through G. I have a motion. Does anybody want to pull any one section out and discuss it or anything like that? Before we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda items 7A through 7G.
I second.
Awesome.
Was one pulled or was G?
None, they're all A through G straight, nothing being pulled. Okay. Hearing any discussion on any item? None? Okay, call for vote by acclamation, please.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
We up to item 8? Item 8, I guess, personnel. Do I hear
I'll move that we approve 8A, B, and C in one vote.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion by anybody? None? Have a vote by acclamation, please.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
None. Number 9, we're up to information. About time, Kevin, you're on.
We have several first reads on policies, and this is obviously at this point informational. Chapter 5, Section 25 is on vacations. This is a change necessitated by the adoption of the Calendar A, Calendar B. And it just defines the unused vacation hours, how they get reimbursed. Chapter 7, Section 7 is the tuition and fee policy that we tabled at the last meeting because it was unclear. And I believe everybody agrees it is clear now. We have a student automobile use and parking policy that reflects some of the changes necessitated by our new parking limitations. And then there's some global revisions that are making to the policy based on the name changes for title positions that we made a couple of meetings ago. And those are changing all program directors to dean, the dean of students to the student conduct and support coordinator, facilities director to facilities manager, enrollment advisor to admission specialist, and marketing director to marketing manager. And that is throughout the entire policy. So there's no substantive changes, just those title changes. And then there's some changes to the glossary to reflect those title changes as well. And there's one change that needs to be made to that. Under the definition of administrator, we need to add dean, and that will be put in for the second read. There are some policy regulations that we also updated. These do not need board approval. These are just also for information. We changed the superintendent's responsibilities to reflect the policy, the title changes, and the student automobile use and parking policy was deleting that the vehicle owner must sign the registration forms because it's all done electronically now. And other than that, that is it for number 9.
I have a couple of questions.
Please.
Wait, one more
Go ahead,
change.
Mr. Lane?
On chapter 5, section 25A, the last bullet point, I should not have deleted the word rate after hourly. That will be reflected in the second read as well.
My question in the glossaries that I have for you, sorry, Mr. Lane, I'll let you go ahead with me. There, you have the glossary there, but it's not a glossary word for a director. There is for dean. So I think it's director instead of dean. You need to define.
I need to define director.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I will add a definition of director for the second read as well.
We have a definition for dean down there. Okay, Mr. Lane?
On the vacations, holidays, I'm just a little curious, how did you arrive at 35.4? Most places do 50% buyback.
I arrived at that figure by deferring to the chief financial officer.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. This is the calculation that we did when we proposed both calendars A and B, and that was the equivalent of the cost that it would cost the district for the option B for the additional, for the option A for the additional holidays. That was the difference between calendar A and calendar B.
Okay. And then on the 42 automobile and use and parking, and then in the next section we have a policy 7 and 42 that has something to do, and they seem to conflict with each other. Chapter 7, section 42, and then item 9 is chapter 7, section 42. So
Correct.
they're not consistent with each other at all.
I seem to be missing one here. Hold on. Where's the one that I missed? One is the policy, one is the regulation. You're saying there's,
Well, it's labeled chapter 7 students, section 42, and the first one is chapter 7 students and section 42. So item number 9 on the agenda is the second one.
correct. Chapter 7, section 42 is the policy. Chapter 7, section 42 is the regulation that goes with that policy.
Well, they're not consistent. You got registration by, I don't know, it should be all one policy and all on the same thing. It just doesn't make sense to me to have it all scattered all over the place.
You know, in the manual, one follows the other. They're separated here because the board has to approve the policy. They don't have to approve the regulation.
Okay, and I'm a little worried about if a kid has to bring another car, so they go out in the morning and their car won't start, and they borrow mom's car to drive to school, and they're in violation unless they're stopping in at the office and getting approved, and there's just not time for a kid to do that.
So, Mr. President, members of the governing board, technically they would be in violation, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think first violation is just a warning, so that there's nothing that materially occurs other than you can't be doing that. With the warning on the car, then it would give the student, if that has to get replicated again the next day because the car still isn't starting, for them to go in and get the pass that allows them to park with mom's car if that's the situation for the next several days. So it's a way for us to be able to manage and better understand what cars should and should not be on our campuses, while at the same time, to your point, making sure that we're not being overly punitive or aggressive in a unique situation.
Right, and then along that lines, if they're booted, $100 to get the boot off seems kind of steep for a high school student. fact, the $50 fine on the third offense seems kind of steep to me for a high school student.
So, and I don't disagree with you, and we can adjust those if that's what the board would like. I think the challenge with it becomes is having a consequence that's significant enough that changes behavior, and there's multiple opportunities on the front end in terms of warnings in which there is no fine levied or no issue that is levied in order to, if the student just makes a mistake. But after the second time, then the third is a fine, and the fourth, then obviously with the boot is a fine, but again, the fines need to be substantial enough that it deters the behavior. Hopefully, we don't get to that point, but unfortunately, at times, without something that is significant, I'm afraid that we will. But honestly, I mean,
Yeah, that seems like a lot, and I know it's got to hurt a little bit, but most of these kids don't have jobs. And they're coming here, additionally, maybe the fourth time at the boot, it goes to suspension of driving privileges to get the boot off.
yeah, I think to Dr. Lynn's point, I think in some ways that hurts them more because the ability for them to get here may be solely
They can
based.
mostly ride the bus from their school.
Some can, some can't. I guess so maybe what we could do is level it back down and have the fourth be 50 and the second be 25. So we cut it in half so that it's somewhat significant,
It's
but to your
doable.
point, not so much so that we price students out of the ability to pay. I mean, ideally, and I think I give Dr. Doolin and Mr. Zaccato credit in terms of trying to navigate the parking situation. Where obviously with our growth, parking becomes a much more critical issue than what we've ever experienced before. And so by having the spots labeled, by having zones in which students are parking, by having the additional security that you all have approved, our hope is that we're able to prevent things like a third or fourth offense because of the proactiveness on our part. But if not, if that isn't the case, if individuals still keep traveling here, then there does need to be a consequence, but we can level it down so it's not so great that it potentially prevents somebody from being able to pay the fine.
Yeah, and you get the argument, yeah, they got a $1,000 iPhone in their pocket, and I get that, but, some of these, that doesn't, it seems like it's all the kids, but it's not all the kids.
No, we know that. So we'll find, we can level it down and make it a little bit more palatable.
So we're going to bring back for the second reading the next meeting. You need to tell me now.
50 and 25.
I think we should give the
Fif-
kids a benefit of the doubt and give them an opportunity to be responsible. How about that?
Well, the first offense is a written warning.
And the second offense is 15, and you want the third offense also to be 15?
25,
Oh, 25 and then 75?
50.
50, okay. I'll make those.
So it's a graduation.
It's a graduation, yeah.
Graduating. Let me ask you this to, open another can of worms. So I knew of students who carpooled, in which they would trade cars each week. One kid would drive one week, and then the next week the other kid would drive their car. The problem here is, and I'm not trying to out any students, was they would often share one parking pass and they would just take it from car to car. So my question is, how often are you checking? Are we having those cars checked, and are they checking license plate, make and model to the sticker? Or is that really an issue? Because I know a lot of kids who have to do that, who they get a car for a couple days of the week that they can use, or vice versa, and they're swapping cars out a lot in order to have a car to get to EVIT based on parents' work schedules or siblings and sharing cars. So how does that kind of all factor into this?
So I'm going to have Dr. Doolin answer that, because I know that she and Mr. Zaccato have actually spent some time trying to work through that.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board. So Amber, to answer your question on that one of the things that we looked at was making sure we had that visitor pass available, and that visitor pass is not necessarily just for the day. So if a student is in a carpool situation, they can actually come in and talk to us, and we can put that in the system and say, these are the cars, this is the pass, or we can issue them a visitor pass and link it to that. We've talked about a lot of all of those things. The biggest issue, the reason we really have to know the parking and who's on this campus, is because this past year, we had a lot of vehicles on campus that we could not identify, And we had some that were here overnight, day after. It becomes an issue if we don't know who's on the campus. So for those one-offs, that's why we wanted to make sure we had the visitor pass. So those students could come in and say, okay, we carpool, there's 5 of us. This is who I am, we're buying a parking pass, and then we'll work with those students.
Okay, awesome, thank you. No, safety is absolutely huge and a huge priority, so thank you for explaining that. We got to keep that in the forefront, but also working with these kids. So that's great.
On a side note to that, are we going to do anything about the condition of that parking lot?
Yes.
It's a disaster.
I don't know that it's a disaster.
Well,
I've seen
it's
worse.
in bad condition. If something's not done, it's going to have to be replaced
Yeah.
at huge cost.
It is. So at some point, actually, as we round out the remodel of the main campus, the parking lot is going to get resurfaced. And so our hope is that we're done with our buildings and our chillers by about this time next year, and then we'll focus on the parking lot. We've done some patchwork, but it truly needs
It needs to be resurfaced.
It does. And so-
Otherwise, it's going to start getting potholes and stuff.
It does.
And at that point, you got to dig it up and put it all down fresh again.
No, we're gonna have to put a resurface on it. The challenge with it is that in order to do that, obviously there needs to be the funding for it. And as we're in the middle of the remodel right now, sequencing out the dollars needed in order to accomplish the remodel, but also to have the dollars available to do the resurfacing. We know that
So where are the dollars for parking permits going?
to pay for security largely, and then to offset some of the future cost of that. But we know that we're having to create parking out at the Alma School exit, so in order to alleviate some of the congestion here on this campus. And so some of those dollars are being allocated towards that. So that is part of our master plan through the life cycle analysis, but it's probably 18 months away is where we're at with the parking lot resurface.
Thank you. That's all I have.
A lot of good comments. Okay, now I need to find where I am.
That takes us to 9,
I
I
took so many
think.
pages with it. Okay, that's
9's the second read,
Okay,
I believe. Is it a second read?
we've done 9A and B, correct? So we're on, Tim. Proposed expenditure budget for fiscal year 24, 25. Mrs. Perez?
Yeah.
Hello, during our last meeting, I did a presentation regarding the budget proposal. After we submitted the information to the Department of Education, the only update that I have is not necessarily reflected into the budget that you are approving, given that we have to, by law, utilize what was proposed and what was posted for public viewing. But in an upcoming meeting, there may be a need to do the budget revision to reflect the 2% increase to the base level. But what you are approving today is the same amount using the prior year numbers that was presented at the last meeting.
So there are basically no significant changes?
There are no changes at all from the proposed budget from the last meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? If not, let's vote by acclamation, please. I need a motion, please.
I move to approve action item 10A, the proposed expenditure budget for fiscal year 25.
I'll second that.
Okay, first and second. Can we have the question by acclamation, please?
Yes, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we have new policies that we need to bring in that was discussed last time about having a pet and contract compensation for people.
Before we get to that, I want to take a slight diversion. There was some question last week about what is the proper composition of a cabinet. Oh, he's killing my.
Mr. President,
He's killing my comic timing.
I think the record ought to reflect, with respect to Mr. Kilville's introduction, good one.
From beginning.
From the beginning,
or
far
from
left, right
current
there.
slide.
There we go. So the question is, what is a cabinet? This certainly. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, cabinet was originally a diminutive form of cabin. In the mid-16th century, a cabinet referred to a small room. It was used as a place of seclusion to get advice from your advisors. And eventually it became called a cabinet council and later simply a cabinet. And there's also another modern use of the word cabinet. If you're not from Rhode Island, you're not going to know this. But in Rhode Island, a cabinet is a milkshake.
Good to know.
And we're not talking about that either. That was a little inside joke right there. So here's a question. Oops, yeah, there you go. Moving along, the first American cabinet, we're talking about executive cabinets, was George Washington's cabinet. It consisted of 4 members. Current president's cabinet has 15 executive departments and the vice president, and the president chairs his cabinet, but he is not a member of the cabinet. And what about school board superintendent cabinets? Some districts have cabinets, some have executives teams, and what is the difference between an executive cabinet and executive team? It's the same difference as between a cabinet in Arizona, a cabinet in Rhode Island and a milkshake here. What's in a name? Not much. Some executive teams include the superintendent, some do not. Some cabinets include the superintendent, some do not. So how do you know? You look at the district board's governing board policy. Here at EVIT, the governing board's policies do not yet include a definition of the superintendent's cabinet, but the proposed policy on the superintendent's cabinet performance pay does. And it does not include the superintendent, which sort of makes sense when you think about it, because we're here to advise him and give him a perspective not his own. So the superintendent proposed the policy does not include him in the cabinet, which suggests he doesn't want to be part of his own cabinet. So the question is, how do we decide? Well, it's completely within your discretion to determine whether the superintendent should be part of the cabinet or not. You get to define it, and that's the proposal before you, is that he not be part of the cabinet. So that is that. Now it's the 2 policies before you, the mascot policy and the superintendent cabinet's performance pay.
Welcome back. Okay, so,
I liked your presentation. That was fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love the history lesson, too.
I just want to know where the cabinets are for us to drink and have. Okay, I think we need a motion on this, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I have a motion on this cabinet, Peggy?
I'll move that we approve action items B for new policies,
10B.
board goals and organizations, and personnel, staff contracts, and compensation, which defines superintendent's cabinet under performance pay.
Well, and it does list the people here, right? Chief Academic Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Operations Officer, Director of Legal Services, and the Public Information Officer. And let me ask Dr. Wilson really quickly. So all these people in the cabinet performance pay, they're not eligible for other bonus pays, is that correct?
So this is a performance plan that is for the cabinet, correct? There are performance plans that everybody in the organization is part of, and they would still be eligible for those. So for example, placement and certifications, which everybody in the organization gets. But this is a performance plan for the cabinet members, much like the 301 plan is a performance plan for the teachers, and they also qualify for the certification and for placement as well.
Thank you.
So we need a second.
I'll second. I
I
don't,
had it out.
yeah, there we go.
I said,
That was hanging.
Sorry, I
No,
did a
you're good.
discussion.
You're good.
I just said the wrong one.
Mr. President, can I ask a question?
You just did.
Go
Go ahead and ask another one.
Let me ask a further question. I guess for Dr. Wilson, I guess what I understand from the learned piece that we just watched, that it's within your discretion whether you're in the cabinet or not, as I understood that.
Yeah, so because we don't have a policy yet that reflects what a superintendent's cabinet is, there is the possibility that the cabinet could include the superintendent. It is my desire to not be part of that, and be, for very selfish reasons, and this is gonna sound different than the way I normally sound. As our direct legal service has indicated, I rely on my cabinet to give direction, advice, and suggestions, and make decisions, and help me make decisions. They're in the best interest of the organization. But I am not part of that cabinet. That cabinet reports to me, and so collectively, at the end of the day, I rely on them and lean on them, but they ultimately report to me. We're not equals, and therefore I'm not part of that cabinet.
You've prefigured where I was going. That absolutely, I understand. I mean, they're wonderful colleagues, I know, but you're their boss.
Correct.
And we're your boss, so the lineal relationship, continues. And I don't mean to be too hierarchical, but I think procedurally that's how that's got to work. And you get to decide their performance bonuses, by the way. So
Yes.
So my next question is, do we need a separate policy that outlines this cabinet, or will this policy cover it?
Well, this policy will cover it until such time as they want to include additional positions or eliminate some of those positions. So if we hire somebody to replace any of those members, those people who fill those positions would then be in the cabinet.
Got it. Thank you.
I guess that's the end of the discussion.
I've got a quick note.
Is Mr. Boyle?
I'm excited about the performance pay plan. I've asked a lot of questions about it before, but one of the things that, provided it is approved by us momentarily, I'd be interested in periodically kind of, as we determine like what the reporting mechanisms would be, so we have some sort of idea.
Sure.
Either towards the end of the year, as to what the performance pay pool might be sitting at, and then how we are moving towards meeting any of the, incentives that you're considering. So,
Sure.
yeah.
I would like that. I would also like to ask if Ms. Perez could maybe give a more in-depth discussion of like which fund is coming out of, how much we usually carry over in that, just a little more in-depth on the numbers in the future.
So you want that to be in the future?
Yeah.
So you can bring that up?
Future agendas.
well, aren't we, Mr. Chairman, aren't we, as a matter of fact, going to be aware of what's in that fund? I mean, it's the amount of adult education fees, isn't it, that's drawn from? So we'll know what that fund is, from which the superintendent's going to be drawing and we get to approve actually the performance bonuses that he proposes. So we're still in charge.
Yes, so it is a percentage of the net of the adult education revenue that ultimately I recommend to you for your approval for the cabinet. To Mr. Boyle's point, I will work with each of the individuals and establish goals for them, but also collectively, and we've talked about this a bit before, there will be some quantifiable goals, but there's also going to be some goals that's hard to quantify. you know, if Ms. Perez doesn't meet her mark on a goal that's established yet, I know Ms. Perez, there's some extenuating circumstances as to why that goal wasn't met, then that will be added into the rationale and reason for the recommendation to you. So to your point, Mr. Hobson, yes, it will be established and defined just by the nature of the organization, and Mr. Boyle will come back periodically, and then ultimately, you as a governing board can approve or reject the recommendations that I make to you this time next year.
So basically, after this meeting, if we approve this, you will go through and sit down with everybody, a person at a time, and go through what the goals ought to be and what you want them to do.
Yes, and then, yes, and ultimately, the driver behind that for all of them is to increase our adult education programming. I mean, that's the bottom line of all of it, right? The more students we have in adult education that we're servicing, the better off that we're going to be. As was the case with my goals over the past several years, they will morph, right? I mean, right now, because we're leaning into kind of the beginnings of the new journey in adult education, the goals that we have this year may be very different than the goals we have down the road, because we may say that part of what we want out of the adult education, and to Mr. Boyle's point, is not only the numbers coming in, but also outcomes. And so we may begin at a year from now saying that that's going to be a percentage of the dollars of the net proceeds, but we're going to tie to it outcomes for completion of program or outcomes for associate degrees earned or so that we evolve in the process. So this is like my goals. This is the first step towards what I hope is an opportunity to go deeper and deeper and deeper as the organization grows.
So I assume that you will get together with them and kind of say, hey, this is the percentage that you're getting before we have the meeting? Or
This time
after?
next, 100%, yeah.
Okay. That they are agreeable to it?
Yeah, they may not be agreeable to it, but they'll know what the recommendation is, yeah.
Yeah, 0%
Yeah,
on
they
you.
don't know what the recommendation is, yes. Whether they agree is maybe a different conversation.
Okay, I can say it's going to be a difficult decision.
Yes, it is. It is.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have, okay.
We need to
Second
vote.
read, I think we're on 10B, aren't we?
I don't think we voted. We have a
We
motion and a second, we haven't voted.
Okay.
But on 10B,
On 10B? Wait, proposed expenditure budget. Okay, never mind. We need, do we have the motion on A? Is that the one?
We did that already.
You've already done A. So I think
We're
you have a
on B.
motion and a second on B, correct?
Okay.
Correct.
I'm glad you guys keep track because I can't. Okay, we have a motion and everything. We'll vote by acclamation, or take the question by acclamation, excuse me.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. We're on
10C.
10C. Okay. Optional fees for orbital welding training. Do Dr. Wilson want to explain that to me? Or someone else?
Is there a first and a second, and I'll just explain it?
Okay. We have a motion.
I move to approve action item 10C, the optional fee for orbital welding certification for fiscal '25.
I'll second.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, this is for adult education. One of the things I think EVIT does really, really well is we look at business and industry, and business and industry comes to us and says, this is what the needs are within the industry. And we know with the microchip and the semiconductor space growing in the valley, one of the needs is orbital welding. We've talked with you the last 2 years about our growing orbital welding program. That orbital welding program certification on the adult education side is an add-on certification that's not part of what their current tuition is. So individuals don't necessarily need to participate and take the orbital welding certification, but if they choose to, then there's a fee associated with it because the price for the program doesn't include the orbital welding. So all this does is allow us to charge students in the adult education space in welding that want to participate and get the orbital welding certification.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, let's for the question.
Okay,
Acclamation.
we vote, right? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Nope, motion carries.
Okay, we have state aid recalculation, money. Do I have a motion on D, 10D?
I'll move that we approve item 10D, state aid recalculation.
I second.
We have a motion, first and second. Dr. Wilson, you want to?
Yes, so Mr. President, members of the governing board, this is a very interesting case that has been ongoing in Maricopa for the past several years, and I know your board backup kind of spoke to it. But the long story short of it is that I think back in 2016, there was some concerned citizens that believed that the county assessor was over assessing property values, and as such was giving dollars to public institutions more than what should have been because the calculation was too high. And we know that that's partly of how we're funded is based on the evaluation. So there was a court case, and long story short, the court found in favor of the plaintiff, which indicated that they believed that there was inaccurate assessments of, I think it was the primary evaluation within Maricopa County. And so as a result, a reclassification has to be done in order for us to determine the dollar amounts that we should have been allocated, which will be less than what we were allocated. The next step then becomes, what is that shortfall, and how do we go about paying it back? Because we received monies potentially that we should not have received because of the inaccurate assessment by the county. So what this does is asking you, as a governing board, to authorize asking the Department of Education to reassess for those years in question so we can get an accurate understanding of what dollars we should have gotten compared to what dollars we did get, so we can know what the shortfall is, and then we'll come back to you at a later date with a discussion about what it looks like to repay those amounts. And when I say repay, I want to make sure that everybody understands what we're repaying isn't because of something we did, right? We were funded based on calculations that were done by an agency outside of ours, and the calculations were inaccurate. And so at the end of the day, we're still going to have to potentially pay dollars back, but it wasn't due to anything we did. Our hope with it is that the dollars can be recaptured over the course of time. So if it's $10 that we owe back, that they can take $1 a year for the next 10 years away from us, and so they actually fund us less, $1 a year for the next 10 years. But we won't know that until we get our evaluation recalculated, and so that's what this is asking, for you to authorize and ask the Department of Education to recalculate for those years in question.
My question, being a taxpayer in the Maricopa County, I have not received a refund, so why would you have to do a refund?
Good question.
Yeah, I just work. No, I think that this will be something that we will continue to see not only as taxpayers, but also as entities that rely on tax-paying dollars. If you read the articles that were there, there's quite a few dollars in a lot of municipalities that are potentially owed back, and at some point then, less dollars potentially sent back to the taxpayer, whether it's actually dollars in hand or what, they don't know yet. But my guess is this will be something that we will work through for quite some time.
Dr. Wilson, Mr. President, Dr. Wilson,
Yes?
will there be some opportunity then for you guys to negotiate with the Department of Revenue or whomever, Department of Education, to maybe not have to reimburse as much as you point out, it's not our fault, and we relied in good faith, and it seems to me the state ought to be covering some of that.
So I think this is actually, to your point, Mr. Hobson, I think this is the first step in that process, right? I think for the state to recalculate what dollars really should have been distributed compared to what dollars were distributed, and then the discussion of how does that get paid back. And I think we then have the ability, whether it's to negotiate or to take a different position based on the magnitude of the dollars that we potentially may have to give back or to not get to offset the error in the evaluation.
Okay.
So nobody has any clue what the quantity, even a
There
range
is.
of quantity?
There is. I think there's quite a bit of speculation, but I think part of the concern is that some of that is just speculative, that there's, at the end of the day, when they redid when they redid the math, they came up with a dollar amount collectively across the county that was over-assessed and earmarked based on the percentages what potentially might be EVIT's issue. What we're asking is to say we want to know definitively what is the amount that we should have received definitively, what was the amount did we receive, and what is that difference? And then the discussion becomes, well, how do we pay it back? And to Mr. Hobson's point, an argument can be made that
They should waive it. Yeah.
they should waive it, or at the very least, allow us to pay it back over the course of years versus one time, because obviously that's a very different issue for us to kind of navigate through. Again, I can't reiterate enough that the issue that we're talking about, though, isn't something that EVIT did. And I think sometimes it's easy for the general public to think, oh, well, they're having to pay it back because they did something erroneous, and that isn't the case at all. We did what we were supposed to. It was an outside entity that erred.
And my understanding is that most, or several, if not many, school districts in Maricopa County will be similarly situated.
Yep. And the community colleges, some of the city councils, some of the town governments. I mean, so this isn't just truth be told, if you read, if there's some validity to some of the numbers that you are reading, and of course, we're not saying that there's validity to it because we're asking to get the right, we will be in a much different situation than others, meaning we won't have the same liability as others, because I believe a large part of the miscalculation was in a certain geographic area within the county, which is a portion of the area that we serve, but we obviously serve a bunch of areas that potentially weren't as impacted as negative. So if you're, for example, a school district in the area that was most egregious, your liability potentially is going to be different than if you're a school district that is an area that wasn't as egregious.
So since this is a Maricopa County issue, should not maybe the county superintendent be involved here rather than the state superintendent?
So the county superintendent has given his opinion, but ultimately it's through ADE that we get funded and the assessment and the evaluation goes through. And so the county superintendent has entered into dialogue, but ultimately that office isn't the office that's going to be responsible for the funding. It's going to be the state superintendent and ADE's responsibility.
So this being a government entity, they'll probably want to charge interest too?
Don't know. I mean, the truth of the matter is that and I'm not, I mean, as a homeowner, if I was charged more than what I should have been, it's not my fault that happened either, right? So as a homeowner, I can take the position of saying I want the money that I shouldn't have paid back, and I want interest on it because you held my money for 3 years. And so I think there's going to be lots of that unpacks over the next couple of
9 years.
Ms. Metcalf has a question.
Okay.
She's off. Now she's.
Are you on?
Yes, I'm here. Mr. Chairman, I have a question. May I ask, please?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, and administration, there is a listing of what the estimated paybacks will be per school district on the county assessor's website. For example, Chandler's is about 13 million, Scottsdale's is about 27 million. We receive a secondary property tax, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so do we know exactly how much we are going to be needing to pay back?
My understanding is about just a titch over $1 million.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Now, my hope is that number goes down, quite honestly. My hope is that number goes down as they go through this process, but the early estimation is about 1 million.
Right, and I understand that it can be negotiated as well through the court, and if it's a hardship, it's my understanding that they could also work something out. But obviously, our first step here is to make sure that as a board, we give permission for ADE to be able to recalculate that on our behalf. So thank you so much. That's all I had.
Well, I think that's in the discussion, so we can ask for the question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we're on to F, funding approved for lunch, dinner, meetings, and restaurants. Do I have a motion?
No, we're on E.
E.
E. But that's because of funding. Do people want to eat or not?
I'll move that we approve funding approvals for lunch and dinner meetings.
Okay, we got
Item 10E.
Second.
And we have a second. Lamar made the second, just before you. Okay. Any discussion?
Mr. President, members of the governing board, this is just consistent with one of the recommendations that came from the first audit in terms of having the governing board authorize prior to. So we're being proactive and asking you to authorize the usage of dollars for different events, whether it be for lunches or for dinners.
Any discussion? Hearing none, ask for the question.
All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 11, executive session. A motion?
I'll move that we enter into executive session.
I'll second.
Okay, we have first and second. May I have a question?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We're convened into executive session.
So, Mr. President, members of the governing
my bed.
You guys
I travel
visiting
with
still
yoga
back and
mat.
forth?
I need a
Okay.
bed.
We're back in business now. Conversation's over. Okay, we're on to staff report. Dr. Wilson, you're on.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, just a couple quick updates for you. First, I'd like to give Dr. Schreiner, Mr. Casaro, and the whole fee day committee, and everybody that worked fee days, Dr. Doolan, Mr. Kelbel, Ms. Perez, Carlos, Chris, Tammy, everybody in here but myself, I'm going to be honest. A ton of credit and a ton of gratitude for orchestrating days last week in which I think we serviced upwards of 5,000, close to 5,000 students in terms of their fees and their supplies and materials so they can be ready for the first day of school. If you remember last year, we weren't as organized as we needed to be, and it was not necessarily the best experience for our students or our parents. But I can't tell you how many parents and students have reached out to me and to others saying, thank you so much, what a wonderful experience, what a great opportunity. My kids were so excited. All the faculty and staff that worked, parents were telling me that they were so engaging, so supportive, so complimentary, that kids walked away feeling even that much more excited about being part of the EVIT family. And so, a lot of time and energy went into planning those days, and I want to thank those that planned them and those that did the work, because it was really night and day difference between this year and what we did last year, and that's the kind of rhythm and momentum we need in terms of going into the next school year. So thank you all very, very much. As we've talked about before, enrollment is still trending in the right direction. We know that every single year about this time we have students that make choices that were different than the choices they made in the spring. Some because the master schedule, some because they moved, and so our numbers are going to fluctuate. But I still anticipate that we have growth that we've been talking about over the past several months. As a reminder, governing board, the early bird specials, Dr. Doolan reminded me about this, the early bird specials for the national conference in San Antonio closes July 31st. So you all, if you're interested, if you would please let Tammy know so that we can secure space. We're still going to have to come back and have some action items, but I'd much rather secure space and have to release the space if we're not going to use it than to miss out on that early bird. It's quite a bit of a significance and savings. And if you remember, part of what we tried to do last year was to come to you early on so that we could capture some of those savings. So if you as a governing board, if any of you are interested, please let Tammy know so we can at least secure the space for the number, and then we'll come back later and have a conversation about what that really looks like in terms of governing board members going based on policy. CTSOs, we have, was it Skills and HOSA? Skills and HOSA are at nationals. One of the things you guys were very great, I was very grateful for, but you were also very insistent that when I became the superintendent, that we had our students not just participate locally, but that we take teams nationally to participate in competitions. And each year we have more and more of our students that are qualifying for nationals and more of our students that are being successful in nationals. And when we talk about the continuum of a student's opportunity here at EVIT, there's so many on-ramps and off-ramps, but some of those are those competitions. And for you as a governing board to be willing to support them and sponsor them to be there this week in those national competitions is just very much appreciated. So new teachers come back July 9th. Wow. Yeah. So we're just closing the books on the last school year and bringing new teachers in here pretty quickly, but we're excited. And we'll get the numbers for you. I know one of the things that was talked about several different times last year was the turnover rate. We had a conversation and we showed what the turnover rate has been for the past several years. And last year's turnover rate was right about on average with what we've had. This year I am anticipating an even better average in terms of, our HR, like I said last meeting, our HR department has done a really nice job working to get positions filled that we needed to get filled, but many of those positions were actually new positions within the organization because of our growth. So the actual number of staff that had contracts with us that are coming back next year, I think is going to be markedly better than what it's been last year, which again, last year was on average with what it's been over the past couple of years. So we have new staff coming on the 9th, returning teachers, I think 10 days later, 2 weeks later, week later?
Yes.
Yes.
about a week later, and then school starts on the 24th of July. So before you know it, we're going to be in the middle of the school year. But still got quite a bit to get done. Our next governing board meeting, Dr. Doolin's going to do an update on our construction projects. I think there's some artifacts that would be interesting to you, and you can see some of the work that has been done, that will be done over the next 18 months, so you kind of get a sense of where those projects are going to land. But a lot going on, but we're excited and grateful that we have the opportunity to do the work we do here. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Any other, you're the only one to speak.
Next
on
board
this.
meeting will be the 8th of July,
It says July 15th.
July 15th.
Yeah,
That's the third Monday.
yep, the third one. It's the only meeting that month, or we're going to have two that month?
Is it just one that month? No, two, the 15th and the
2 weeks after that?
29th.
29th.
29th,
Oh, shoot, we'll be back in school. So the second meeting of next month, school will be in session.
okay, first day,
No, 5 days later.
5 days later, okay. All right. We do appreciate, the board does appreciate all the work that you've done and your cabinet
Thank you.
and teachers.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. President, may I make a comment as well?
yes,
Dr. Wilson, I understand how hard it is to be an administrator. And for the last 22 years, that's what I've done. And I just want to commend you and your executive council, all your administrators working as a team and holding fast to the vision and mission of EVIT and growing it beyond where it was, even when I was a teacher there. So I just want to commend you and your team and thank you, all of you, for all of the hard work you do, because being an administrator is not an easy job. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I just wanted to express my gratitude.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
okay. On to B, adjournment. Got a motion, second?
I'll move we adjourn. Second.
We have a second, Lamar. Ask for the question, please.
All in favor for adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?